Hey book friends, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the video where we talk all about the books I didn't like in 2023. So you guys, I read like 50 to 60 books a year. And so I do find myself kind of drawn into kind of hyped books and things like that. But this year I have been much better at just stopping reading those books if I don't like them, if I don't vibe with them. You guys, I have found out I don't really like cozy books of any kind. I mean, I knew I didn't like cozy mystery because when I first started this channel in like 2020, I tried some cozy mystery. No. And then this year it feels like cozy fantasy. And I'm like, no, I don't think I like cozy books, and that's just fine. And so in this video, we're going to be chatting through all of the piles of books that I have that I didn't like. I have a pile of DNFs. I have a pile of disappointed books. And then I have one book that was my worst book of the year that I really didn't like. And I almost did not put it on this list. And you'll see why, because I kind of feel bad about it, but I really didn't like it. So I'm going to put it on this list, and sorry for being that person, but that's the plan for this video. So stay tuned if you are curious what books I did not like in 2023. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to the channel. So like I said, we're going to be talking all about the books I did not like in 2023. But I did have a lot of books I loved, and that was yesterday's video. So be sure to check that out in case you want to know the books I do love, which are not these books. So obviously I'm going to include the disclaimer that of course these are not bad books. These books are just not my taste. I wasn't vibing with them for whatever reason. I mean, I'll share those reasons with you, but that doesn't make them bad books. And if you happen to love these books, please let me know down in the comments. I love to hear that from you guys. So let's just hop in to most disappointed books. Okay, where to start? I'm going to start with Susan Meisner. Okay, you guys, I read the latest Susan Meisner book maybe this summer. I made a whole vlog about it. I'll link that above. I kind of forgot I did that. But I did not love this book on multiple fronts. First off, Susan Meisner is a favorite author. I'm pretty sure, still a favorite. But what I love about her work is I love how she's able to take like a singular event in history and make you really feel it. I mean, she's a historical fiction writer, and usually I'm just so immersed in her story, it really transports you into whatever the tragedy is, whether it be like the London bombing or the San Francisco earthquake. There's just so many that I loved from her, and this book did not necessarily take that approach. And I think maybe that's partly what threw me off. But the other thing is I felt like this book kind of had a bit of an agenda. Like she was trying to make a point in what she was writing about. And by no means do I disagree with her point. Like as a whole, this book is about eugenics. It's not explicitly said, but I think it's important to be said that this book is about eugenics, because in my opinion, that's a pretty big trigger in case there is some child loss, anything in your past. You might not want to pick this up. But if you are interested in the topic of eugenics, and not only eugenics like with the Nazis, although there's a part of this story that has to do with World War II, but eugenics on like American soil sort of idea. I liked that part. I just didn't like the stories, and I didn't like how it was set up because it was around this woman. I cannot even remember her name. I believe when her parents died, she was taken into kind of the big house as more of like a ward versus like a maid, but she was treated kind of more like a maid, and then some things happened. She became pregnant and they kicked her out basically, and she ended up in this insane asylum. But then at the same time, there was this other plot line that started like halfway through the book, which was part of my problem with it, is it was very jarring. It almost felt like two books, but it was two books trying to make the same point. So I get it, but I didn't like the execution really. And that second story followed more like eugenics in Europe during World War II. So yeah, it wasn't my favorite Susan Meisner. I think I ended up giving it 3 stars, although at this point I feel like some of these books, as I've sat on them a little longer, are more like 2 stars. But anyway, Only the Beautiful by Susan Meisner is my first book I wanted to talk about that I was disappointed in. The next book, oh my gosh, you guys, I loved the Inheritance Game trilogy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I think I raved about it last year. I raved about how I just loved the whole trilogy. It was so fun. It's like a YA mystery type book. It's a very puzzly book where there's lots of riddles and all these things to be solved. And I just loved it. I loved it. I even could get past some of the teenage angstiness of the books. But the author put out, I feel like, a spin-off series where it's kind of following some of the brothers. So in the original, inheritance game trilogy. It's about this girl named Avery who finds out that she has inherited a bunch of money, and in order to get that estate and get all that inheritance, she has to live in the house of this eccentric billionaire who gave her all the money. She has to live there with his grandsons for a year, and there's all these puzzles to be solved. And there's the question to be answered of why was she chosen over all of his family? And I thought the original trilogy did a good job of like answering that and really pulling you into Avery and her story. And then this kind of follows a bit more, and I'm just not sure if I needed it. Is kind of how it feels. I'm not sure if I needed the extra, although I love the characters. I felt like the things that I loved from the original trilogy were not as present in this book, and I didn't have the same connection, even though these were characters I really enjoyed in the first trilogy. I'm not quite sure why. It just kind of fell flat for me. So that's another one on my list of disappointed books. Okay, I think I'm gonna go kind of back and forth between DNFs and disappointed books. So you guys, I DNF'd Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. There's so much hype around this book, and I wanted to like it. I wanted to love it. I thought it sounded really good. Everybody's like, oh, it's just like a warm hug, a cozy fantasy warm hug about coffee, right? And I love coffee, and I love the idea of this book. I think I made it about 100 pages, and it's like a 300-page book. So I made it a third of the way through, and I was just kind of bored. I didn't really care about the characters. The main character didn't really pull me in. I forgot her name's Viv, and previously was kind of this bloodthirsty orc maybe, and she just wanted to settle down and open a coffee shop. And this first part of it was going through her doing that, like setting up a coffee shop and convincing others that this thing called coffee is really good. And I felt like it had more of that kind of slice of life, like I want to become an entrepreneur, but I happen to be a fantastical creature sort of idea. And I just don't read those books anyway. And so the fact that it has fantasy associated with it, it just didn't do anything for me. So I found out that, you know, cozy might be a buzzword that I avoid in the future. I just DNF'd it because I wasn't enjoying it. And I'm getting better at doing that. Another one I DNF'd, and this is because I disliked it with a passion. And this is The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. And I know this is such a polarizing book. I feel some people love it or some people hate it. And I just fell into the camp of like, there was no reason to read this book. I wasn't finding myself drawn into the characters. I didn't care about the characters. And that happens with these kind of more psychological driven books. And maybe this isn't even psychological. I'm not sure. It's just kind of distasteful. It was, for me, a little distasteful. This is about a girl, I forgot her name, named Alex, who is kind of down on her luck. She's wants to be a writer, and then there's this famous writer, like her favorite writer from childhood or college, that is running this contest to bring a select number of people to this retreat. And their task is to write their next novel or their next story. And it's kind of cutthroat and competitive and things like that. And you know what? That storyline didn't bother me. I thought that was really interesting. I still think that's interesting. I didn't like the execution of the book because I felt like, and this is just me personally, I don't like books that are over sexualized for no reason. That's how it felt with this book. It felt like they had to make it like edgy. Like these girls had to be edgy and these things had to happen. And it was just like, that does not drive the plot in my opinion. And the thing is I DNF'd it. So I don't know how it ends, and maybe it did drive the plot. Maybe that was imperative to the plot. But if that's the case, I didn't want to read it anyway. I didn't want to finish reading it if that was all the book was about, was just kind of like her past and what happened in her past and all of these things that I just was like, I don't even like you. I don't like the main lady who's like hosting all of these people. And it just was kind of for me. So I DNF'd this. Hard DNF on that one. I really disliked it. Okay, moving on to a book that I was disappointed in. I did finish it, so it's a disappointed book, and it's Taylor Jenkins Reid. It's a Taylor Jenkins Reid, so it's Malib Rising. I like Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing style. I really enjoy how immersive she is. I really enjoy how you care about her characters. They're very character-driven books that very much draw me into the story and the characters, and they're always mildly historical, but I feel like they're kind of more near modern times. So this book though, this book has to do with this group of siblings in Malibu, and they have like a famous dad who kind of ditches them, and there's some struggles with their mom. And then it's really about these siblings. And I loved that part. So that's probably why this one, I think I gave 3 stars in the end. Like, it wasn't like I hated it. This is definitely not like worst book material for me. What got me in the end? What got me was all the crappy Hollywood stuff. It was all the rich people doing rich people stupid things and just being very entitled. And the thing is I don't pick up these kind of books on purpose. I don't like celebrity type books because that's part of the plot, right? I just don't like it. I don't enjoy reading from that perspective. And even though I did really like the siblings and the sibling interactions, I didn't love how much of it was about like Hollywood and celebrity lifestyle and the rich and the famous and things like that. So it wasn't nearly what I wanted out of this book and out of Taylor Jenkins Reid. So not that I will stop reading her books. I will continue to read her books. Okay, so as for the last book I still own that I was disappointed in. So this, again, I finished the book. It wasn't a terrible disappointment. It was just kind of like, it wasn't what I expected. And maybe I should have looked into the book a little bit more, but it's called The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. Now, this book is kind of the epitome of what you would call like grim, dark fantasy. And that was always how it was described. So it's not like I walked in not knowing that. And the grim, dark stuff, I guess, didn't bother me as much. So some of it's kind of graphic and stuff. But I knew that was coming. What it was about this book. Well, first, what's the book about? So this book is about, well, that's the problem, actually. That's the problem. It was hard to know what this book was about. I feel like this was a huge setup book about kind of this big war that's going on between, I think it was called the Union and like the Northmen. And there's different key players that you meet in this book, and you get all this backstory. And I'm just not sure if I need the backstory because I don't know what the plot is. Like, there really wasn't a plot. I feel like maybe there was a little bit of a plot at the very end, but it's been a number of months since I've read it, and I cannot even remember what happened. My memories of this book are meeting the like 3 main characters, which one was, I think his name was Glokta, and I think he was my favorite, and he was like this torturer, and he has just this crazy past, and I don't know, the inner monologue of his character was pretty funny and entertaining. Some of the things he did was not funny at all, but I did enjoy his character. And then there was this like nobleman who was always like full of himself, and he was like sword fighting all the time, and there was this competition with him. And then there was this like magi, which you don't quite understand his role in this, and I think he was probably also more interesting to me because I feel like his character helped set up maybe a little bit of the plot, that there was more going on in the past, and the fact that he's here and he's kind of changing things, that means that something's going to happen. I do have the second one, and I still have not decided if I want to keep going because I think I just need to read like the last 50 pages to remember what the plot was about, and I might be able to pick up the second book, but I don't really like that. This was a big book, you guys. This was like 500 pages. This is 500 pages, and they're all this big. And I feel like what it is about a book like this is I feel like I'm missing something, or I feel like I'm not smart enough to understand it. There should be something more here, and I don't know what it is. And then I'm like, should I keep reading because I'm missing something? And there's a reason that people really like this book. I don't know. Anyway, so that was on the kind of list of disappointed books. And these other books I have since sold because I didn't like them. The first was a DNF, and it's such a popular book. Okay, I DNF'd Babble by R.F. Kuang. I know so many people love this, and I thought I would too because I really like historical fantasy, which is what this felt like, on top of it being kind of a magic school almost. It's like a school of translation. So that's a little bit of the setup, but then our main character, which you get to know a bit before he goes to the school, he's kind of thrust into something kind of right off the bat, and I just didn't, one, I didn't care, but 2, I didn't believe he would actually do the things he was thinking of doing, because the underlying plot for this book had a lot to do with kind of colonialism and the idea of kind of the upper class pushing down the people below them. And he came from kind of those lower classes, if I remember, and now he's becoming an elite just because he is gifted in some ways and he's a part of this school. But then it seems like he just kind of gets drawn into this web that I wasn't quite understanding, and I just wasn't believing that he would do it, in all honesty. And so yes, I didn't make it very far. For those of you who have read that, that's like as far as I made it, 90 pages or something like that. And I just felt like it was too detailed. Not much going on and too much detail for what was going on. And then I just wasn't sure if I believed that the main character would do what he was doing. So I DNF'd it. It felt like a soft DNF at first, and I know so many people love it. And again, it's one of those things that I feel like, am I missing something? I'm just not sure. So I DNF'd Babble. Another popular book, I DNF'd. Let's just put them all out here. I DNF'd People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, right? I've never read any of her books. They're very popular. Again, this is an idea of a hyped book, right? Lots of people love it because really I don't enjoy a plot that is just romance. So contemporary romance doesn't usually get me. I do like some romance in other genres like fantasy. I do like some fantasy romance, some. But with this book, it had to do with these friends that were kind of lifelong friends, and they'd met in college, and they always went on these like annual vacations, and then something happened, and now she's trying to rekindle the friendship, and there's some like miscommunication and lying going on. I just felt like neither of the timelines, the like back in college and the current day ones, were drawing me in to like care about either of these characters. And so I think I made it about halfway with that one, and then I was just like, why am I reading this? I don't like romance anyway, so I put it down. Okay, another book that's on my disappointed list, and I finished it, and I'm not sure if this actually should be on my disappointed list because I think I might not be the target audience for this book, and that was The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. It's another Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and I really like the inheritance games, and yes, it's YA, and yes, this is YA, but I think she's gotten better in her writing craft since she wrote The Naturals, which is about this kind of group of teenagers who have special abilities that make them very useful to the FBI, that make them useful in like cold cases and things like that. And so she's brought in, she doesn't really want to be there. There's something that happened to her mom in her past, and so that's really what's driving her signing up for this program, if you will. So I felt like it was fine. It was fine, but it wasn't what I was expecting from Jennifer Lynn Barnes. And then the thing I had to ask myself is I just really like books with puzzles and kind of confusing plot lines where you're trying to solve it along with the characters. I like those books. And maybe it wasn't really the author's writing style that pulled me into the Inheritance Games trilogy. Maybe it was just the plot. And so reading anything else from her is kind of falling flat because there's two. I realize there's two books on my most disappointed list this year that are Jennifer Lynn Barnes books. So the last one I want to talk about before I talk about my worst book of the year, the last DNF that I have is a historical fiction book called A Single Thread by I think Tracy Chevalier. I've been struggling this year, 2023, with historical fiction books, and I feel like this kicked it off. So this book is about this woman who is, I believe, post World War I, when there is no men around, right? They all died in the Great War, and so there's just a surplus of women, and so she's part of that surplus woman, and she's trying to work at a typist jobs, and she's trying to make ends meet, and it's very difficult. And then she walks past this cathedral, and she sees this group of women who are sewing and embroidering these cushions for the cathedral and for the church, and it seems like a group of friends, and she just wants that. I think she's lonely, and I like that. But then the second part of the book, it kind of veers off. Like she goes off by herself, she's doing some other things, and I'm just like, why are we doing this? I really was there for the friendships. I was there for like the sewing circle and all of this stuff. I thought that was really fun. And then it just kind of fell flat. And I was reading it with a number of people, and they had already kind of shared a bit about what it was, and I was like, I'm not interested in that plot line. And so I put it down. I was like halfway. I was more than halfway. And so I was just like, I put that aside. I'm getting better at DNFing. And so that's my last DNF. Those were my disappointed in DNFs. But I do have one book. I have one book that I just really disliked. You guys, it's a memoir. And I feel like memoirs you should never dislike. Hey friends, this is editing Angie from the future. So as I was going through my comments on this last book, I decided I'm just gonna pull them back a bit. I'm gonna tell you what the book is that I didn't like, but I just don't need to share my thoughts on it. Unless you are interested in reading the book, then please reach out to me and I can explain my issue with the book. But I read it for a book club, and that was probably it. If I wouldn't have read it for a book club, I probably wouldn't have even read it. It's not my type of book. I wasn't really drawn to the premise of the book, which is about a man as he was struggling through the grief of losing a college friend. And that's all I'm going to say about it. The book, which I didn't even say, was Stay True, and I think it's by Ha Shu is how you say his name. But that's the book. It's my least favorite book of the year, but really the guilt from like bashing a memoir. I just didn't want to do it. I couldn't do it. But anyway, that's what I have to say. Back to the end of the video. That is what I have for kind of a recap of 2023 and the books I did not like. For the year, this isn't too bad. This wasn't too bad. I was able to DNF more and I was able to read some really good books because I wasn't reading those books. And so I hope you all are doing well. And please, again, let me know down below. Maybe tell me your worst book of the year, as well as feel free to tell me you loved some of the books that were on this list. I'm okay. I can take it. So you guys, I hope you're doing well. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please like it, subscribe if you want to, all the things. But I will see you guys in the next book video. All right, guys, take care.